Who's next at 170? Right? Once Colby and Edwards get done, they are done. And it's important that you understand that because we see so many rematches, particularly at 170. We're not going to see one here. This is a one-off. One time. If Colby wins, there's nobody within the UFC that's like, oh, we got to get Leon back in there. Like, that's just not happening. And if Colby does not win, Colby knows what he's up against. That'll be 4 opportunities. Number 5's not coming. It's just a reality. So, who's next? And from the welterweights on display that are being showcased, 6 of your top 10 guys, 60% of the top welterweights will all be on this card. So it'd be very reasonable to believe that who's next for the winner of the main event is going to come out of this card, but they're not. And that is wherein lies the problem. Like, if there's anything that I don't want this sport to continue doing, if there's anything within 2023 that I hope we do not do again, it is the idea of having 2 guys in the same weight promised the same thing. It is having 2 guys in line for a championship match. Prior to 2023, we've done it once. Once ever. It was the night Francis Ngannou knocked out Rosenstrike. And he looked so impressive, talking about Francis, that Dana said he will not fight again until it's for the belt. Now, Dana meant that as a compliment. He meant that as a recognition of the hard work and a way of awarding and rewarding Francis. That's how he meant it. The unseen negative byproduct was we already had Stipe and Daniel signed. So for the first time ever, we had identified a number 1 contender prior to the match. That had never been done before. You always had the match. Then came the number 1 contender. So it was just one of these situations, and then Francis was upset. Now he can't get a paycheck. Right? It's very different if they're going to fight next weekend. Their fight was a meaningful amount of time. 4 months away, I'm making it up like something like that. It was a meaningful amount of time in the future. So all Francis knows is I don't get paid for 4 months plus whatever a cycle is. Training camp, media, booking venues, playing that whole game. Realistically, I now just got put on the unemployment line for 10 months. That's how Francis heard it, and that's exactly what happened. So, okay, great. We won't do that again. Well, no, 2023 comes around. I lose track of how many times we've done it. Volkanovski was in that spot. Volkanovski was in that spot to the point that he's in the front row while Charles is the one in the ring. Fine. So we got Charles and Volkanovski. There's a little bit more to it. It was a backup fight, and he was going for it. It wasn't so there's a little bit more to it, but that ends up coming around. We get that fight done. We get into a position somewhere in the year at 185 pounds where we tell Du Plessis his next fight will be for the championship. The champion, in an unforeseen, gets beat, which then makes the champion the number 1 contender. Israel Adesanya is the one who not only should have, he would have and was offered Sean Strickland next, which pushes Du Plessis, which makes that, right, it's one of those things. The promise was good when we made it, the landscape changed, now it's Adesanya. Yeah, that's right, that's exactly how it should be. But Adesanya turns it down. Du Plessis never gets mentioned. Kamaru and Chimaev fight for the number 1 contendership. That ends up not happening, and without any mention whatsoever, Du Plessis get brought back in. So we now have Du Plessis as the number 1 contender. Okay, great. Knowing Izzy will get the number 1 contendership if he says he wants it, and knowing that Chimaev is the number one contender. That doesn't work for me. And I love having three guys, and I love having three guys argue, and I'd like to hear what Whitaker has to say, and of course take Paulo Costa into consideration. But when it's already been stated, it gets weird. Islam is going to fight somebody. Oh, it's Charles. Islam's going to fight Charles. Charles told the world he wasn't going to do the fight, but booked the fight anyway. Charles turns out a man of his word and did not do the fight. He had a little scratch above his head here. So then we brought in Volkanovski. Now that was good news because that's who we were told was going to be next. We were told prior to the Charles fight that if Islam beats him, he will fight Volkanovski next. But then Justin Gaethje becomes the BMF champion, which makes him the number one contender. So now we got to go with Charles, who the fight is signed. We know Volk is next. That's already been promised to the world. And we got Gaethje, who just became the number one contender. So now Gaethje, in theory, is going to wait for Charles, Volk, and then he gets to go. We got rid of Charles and Volk in one night. Gaethje should be up next, but somehow he's not. The guy with the scratch on his forehead gets to come. Like, it just gets weird. It's just something I hope that we don't keep doing. Blahal has been waiting. Blahal has been named the number one contender. Fine. I get how that happened. I get why it happened. I don't like the idea of the number one contender being named before the championship match. I just don't love the concept, but I do understand where it becomes a necessity at times to make fights happen. It's just a situation that I hope stops. I really do. I don't like it, and I don't like it because I don't understand it. We have Jones and Stipe. That's the fight. Okay, great. Well, everybody tried. Everybody did what they said they would do. Everybody did their best. We don't have the fight. That fight is now gone. There is no bout agreement anywhere for that fight. That fight does not exist. That fight is in your minds. There's no date. There's no on sale. There's not even a targeted venue. Which is where you think then you would change things and get everybody back to work and everybody paid and everybody moving along. But once those deals get made and they put into place, you've got to play them out, right? You got lots of games being played here, right? You got lots of pieces of the pie, but the integrity piece of the pie, that one exists as well. And you can't serve them all. So as we go into 2024, if there's anything, if Chael has a small wish list over here, I only ask for one thing. One number one contender at a time. One promise issued at a time. When that promise is revoked, an announcement comes out. Then we know to look for a new number one contender, and then we can have that match. But there's a big deal when there's an announcement for this guy, and then we all know it's going to be this guy, and then we're going to hold a number one contenders match for this guy, then we're going to skip all of them and go back to this guy. Like, it's one of these things. Throw an announcement in between. Tweet would do. Say it under your breath. Say it real fast. Say whatever you got to say. But don't say three different guys are a contender for the same belt at the same time.